Thanks, Stacey. I'd like to invite outgoing chair of SPC, Tim Cobbett, to the stage to say a few removing any words on his way out. Tim Cobbett, everyone.
On a sheer commitment just to not going away. I did wonder at times whether I would ever actually be able to wrench myself away from the procedures desk, and that I might end up hobbling in here as a 76-year-old still proceeding the committee, so I thought I'd better stop while there's still a few people left that know who I am to say goodbye to and hear my final words. John is very kindly also attempting to record it for me, because I've now been here so long that I've outlasted a lot of the people that I would actually be talking about, so I'm keen to send them the copy rather than...
Could you repeat the first...
Because they're not actually in the room.
Could you repeat the first minute? I missed it.
It's okay. I'll carry on. I actually got involved in the student movement first of all just because I thought it might be useful to be a course rep for my own course, and they wanted someone to be one. And I think that's actually, in a way, quite an important thing about what the student movement does, is that I think one of the best things it does is it takes people who are interested in one area and it makes them aware of a whole load of issues and actually politicises them in a way that you'd never get exposed to otherwise. You might come in through being a rep, or you might come in through activities and then become aware of the campaigning and political side, and I think the way it does that for students is really important. One of the things I think I've most enjoyed in terms of being in the student movement is both what it's done for myself and my own development and confidence, but also what I've seen it do for some of the other people that I've seen start and finish. And in many ways, that's one of the reasons why I still work in it now. I work in a students' union, and I imagine that although it might not be the best paid thing to do in the world, I'm very likely to stay in the student movement. So this is my leaving speech from my time involved formally in these conferences at NUS Scotland. I don't think I'll probably leave the movement at any point, because I'm sort of deeply embedded in its values and would always kind of naturally think that I want to continue in it. I wanted to talk about just a few highlights, and this is going to be very edited highlights, from my time when I was actually in the SPAC of the Vice President of Academic Affairs at USA. And I think probably what I want to get across really about that is, and this was always my big thing when I was in the movement, is sometimes there is a kind of choice put out there that people kind of put out, that you either have to be for common sense policies about academic representation that benefit normal students, or you have to be a kind of political student officer that looks at the bigger picture. But the reality is that there is no such choice as that. It's possible to do both of those things. It might involve a lot of hours of work to do it, but it's possible to do the roundabout and see the bigger picture as well. And I spent a lot of my sabbatical year working on things like feedback in the personal tutor system. I also looked at environmental sustainability in the curriculum and fair trade. I got the university to remove Robert Mugabe's honorary degree, which you can imagine they were absolutely thrilled for me to be having meetings with them about that. And we were also, in my sabbatical year, in the year that we twinned USA with the Student Association of Bearside in the West Bank, and we went over to the West Bank to visit them and support their right to education, very similar lines to the motion that we had in conference about that topic today. My journey into NUS is a bit of a funny one, because for the vast majority of the time I was involved in USA, USA was not a member of NUS at all, so I never expected to literally have anything to do with it, let alone about 108 conferences that I've now managed to attend. And it was only actually in the year before I became an officer at USA that USA joined through the referendum, and that's quite a rare event. Very standard to NUS referendums end up changing the status quo. The ones that are out normally stay out, the ones that are in normally stay in. It's very difficult to change people's minds, and USA have been out for a long time, along with the other non-affiliates like Glasgow and St Andrews, and of course Dundee here. And both sides, I think, the yes and the no side, are very broad coalitions of people that either wanted to be in NUS or didn't want to be in NUS for some very different reasons. But I felt that, as much as there might have been things about NUS at that time that I didn't think were perfect, I always felt that USA's place should be in it, contributing to it. And I know, like, some of the people, because USA's a big, fairly wealthy union, some of the people in USA over the years have felt, coming to these events and what do we really get out of it. But I always felt that actually one of the main roles USA can play in NUS is developing the unions that don't have the wealth of resources that users like enough to have available. And actually we were able to do things and knew about them because of the big staff team that we had that not everyone has. And one of the great things is we could share that knowledge. It wasn't necessarily about what we would get out of it for the organisational development of USA, it was about what we contribute to it. And certainly as time's gone on, students from Edinburgh have made a real contribution to it. What I've also seen, I think, in my time across the many conferences I've been to is a real change in the political culture of NUS Scotland, and it's a change in terms of, now I'm off SPC and can say this, in terms of my personal politics, I think has been really exciting, because when I started being involved in it, it was kind of like a talking shop for people that would sort of go on to be career politicians in the future. You're always going to get those people, and those people have a role to play, but it's not necessarily the only voice you want to hear. And now I think the organisation has moved to being much more of like a radical campaigning organisation. And I know there's a debate that goes on in the movement about whether that's a right approach. And I just think, whatever your politics are, I think there's real evidence from some of the stuff that NUS Scotland has done of actually taking an approach where you try and actually build a grassroots movement, and where you're actually serious about what you ask for and you make big demands, is actually in any case the more successful approach to take. In an unequal power relationship, the idea that you can just sort of smooth things over with ministers, have a cosy chat with them, and maybe tweet a picture of a letter that you sent to them, and you're going to be able to change society in the way that students need it just isn't realistic. And of course, in some of the radical policies that NUS Scotland takes, it doesn't get everything that it asks for, but it gets a lot more than it would get if it didn't ask for any of it in the first place. And I think that some of the directions that it's gone has been really exciting. I've seen a lot of NUS Scotland elections. I'm not going to comment on all of them, but there were a couple of majorly close and tense ones that stick in the memory. And in fact, obviously, in many ways, this year's one has been a credit to the candidates involved, because they were able to have a contested elections without it being a kind of such a tense atmosphere. But in many ways, I thought the election that kind of marked the political turning point was after James Alexander was the president when I was on the SEC. It was expected that the guy who was president of USA at the time was a Labour student, would become the officer, and I was quite involved in the campaign to stop that happening. And the person we got elected instead wasn't necessarily the best president that NUS Scotland's ever had, but he did open up the political culture to other ways of thinking and other people in a way that might not have happened otherwise. So in many ways, I still regard that as important, that we were involved in that. That led to the next year, where the coin toss election happened, where Liam, the whole course of NUS history was changed by Liam winning against Gurjat on a coin toss. You know what I mean? After a drawn vote, and David Donaldson, who was the chair of what was then called steering at that time, in his leaving speech announced that he'd be forever remembered as the man who tossed Liam Burns off to victory. I've had a few exciting dialogues with Liam, shall we say, over the time. Great respect for Liam in terms of an operator and how good he is at making the arguments and doing the job, but never quite agreed with the political vision that he had when he was leader and when he was leader of NUS. I think at times during that time, NUS Scotland had positions where they were asking less of the Scottish Government than the Scottish Government was offering to NUS. I'm not sure that was necessarily the right place for it to be, but Liam will expect me to say that and probably give me a load of banter back on Facebook anyway, which I'll then ignore because I don't like social media. It's one of the many things that's changed during my time in NUS has been the growth of all these conferences being dominated by Twitter and Facebook. And you almost seem to spend half the time on Twitter and Facebook when you're at the conference, rather than as well as participating in the conference. But I rather take the view of my comedy hero Stuart Lee on Twitter, which is, it seems to be a kind of surveillance sort of Stasi staffed by enthusiastic and gullible volunteers, and telling you every 10 minutes that someone's just walked into a room. And I almost feel that we could have done without it, but the only time I do tweet is when I tweet as NUS SPC and these conferences, which I no longer have to do. A few things about actually the Scottish Procedures Committee itself. My own kind of life has had a lot of instability in it, and I've had issues with my mental health. In fact, when I was a sabbatical at USA, at one point, all four of us were mentally ill in some way at different points of the year, and sometimes it happened at different times so we could support each other, and sometimes it happened at the same time, and I was worried at one point that there was going to be no appointments left at the University Counselling Service for any actual students. Such another appointment has been taken by USA sabbaticals, having had to read the comments that people had left on the USA forum, as actually no longer exist. But I think, in a way, being on SPC has been great, because I've never felt more at home anywhere, really, than I have on SPC, because you get basically a committee of people that see the world in a slightly similar geeky way to you do. And it's one of the few places where I've been that I don't actually feel that I'm that odd anymore, and that's really been quite nice. What's also been really nice about doing it is that for some reason, I think partly just as a result of the fact that I've stepped out of the political side and have just hung around and become sort of part of the furniture, is I've somehow mysteriously by stealth managed to become relatively popular. I have to say that was something I would have never expected. I don't think I've ever been popular before. Certainly last night when lots of people were coming up, I mean they were drunk, but when lots of people were coming up and saying to me that they were sorry that I was staying and that I was an inspiration, I'm not quite sure how doing a bit of satire would be counted as being as well. I'm not exactly Obama or Gandhi or somebody, but it was very nice of them anyway to say so. And it has been nice, but it also has been a privilege to be able to serve on it, because although a lot of the work of the Scottish Procedures Committee is, administrative and not terribly exciting work, I've been very happy to do it because the student movement has given me so much. I still work in it now. I didn't know particularly what I was going to do with my life before I came into it, and I get so much out of sort of working day to day with students. I was very happy to do a role that would mean that you could actually just facilitate processes and other people taking part in debates and elections. And there's always going to be a need for someone to do that role, because there's going to be like rulings that staff and officers don't want to be in a position to have to make, and they're going to need the committee. I assume that probably now Ross will take on the baton from me, so I wish him well with that. I think it will need a little bit of looking at in terms of actually the organisation supporting the Procedures Committee to be able to do some of the work it wants to do in enabling participation in the democracy. Partly because I've stayed around for a while, it's sort of been assumed that I'm going to carry on and talk to the new people, but they will need to sort of look at the support and structure for that. At some point they might also want to think about the name, because I've still no idea what a Scottish procedure actually is. Maybe after last night's chat it's deep frying a Mars bar, or maybe it's just hating the Tories, but nonetheless, maybe you should either call it the Scottish Democratic Procedures Committee or call it something else, but I've never had the time to do that, so who knows whether anyone else will either. I just wanted a couple of things about the organisation. I don't work with the staff obviously week to week, but in terms of the organisational culture, the sheer amount of work, as others have said, that the staff put in is incredible. In some ways it's almost arguably too incredible in terms of the expectations. The sort of working culture is so hard that it almost puts too much pressure on people, but the amount that people put in over and above to support the officers in NUS, and always have done for all the years I've been involved to make the campaign work that the organisation does possible, is fantastic. But the person that I have worked particularly closely with, because of the way it relates to SPC, is Anne MacDonald, and I'm really going to miss my contact with Anne. She's just such a nice person to work with. We have a sort of rapport where we now have a kind of established kind of facial expressions and signs when emergency things come up in the run-up to the events, and we take it in terms which one of us is panicking and which one of us is reassuring the other one that the stuff can be got together for confidence and time. And it's going to be funny not to have half of my personal emails filled with urgent emails from Anne. I'm not sure that the other emails I get in there are about penis enlargement and taking part in very expensive master's courses in made-up American universities are really going to replace those SPC emails that I get. But Anne's a fantastic staff member. She's the sort of person that does a lot behind-the-scenes work that isn't noticed, but other things were just ground to behold if she didn't do all the work that she does do. I also just wanted to talk briefly about a member of staff that I worked with when I was at USA. There was a staff member when I was at USA who provided the support for the Freshers' Week coordinators, and I was a Freshers' Week coordinator before I was a sabbatical officer, and also for the SABs as well. There was Marion Matheson. She was very, very well liked by all the people. In fact, I think she was the only person at USA that I was there that was actually liked by all the people involved. Despite whatever rows you were having with the other person, she would be friends to everyone and a confidant to everyone. And we also had a sort of interesting cultural exchange while I worked with her, where we would open each other up to new ideas. So I would sort of encourage her to listen to programmes on BBC Radio 4, and she would encourage me to occasionally relax and try and enjoy myself, and then we would report back to each other on how that had gone. Marion was much loved, but very sadly, like within sort of the couple of years at the time that she left she had cancer and actually passed away at a young age. And I know that she's very much missed by all the people from my era at USA, and had she still been, it would have been exactly the sort of person that might have been picking up the kind of Lifetime Achievement Award that we saw last night. And I still miss her and have a special place in my heart for the relationship I have with her. A few funny stories from my time in the movement. There was the time that running up to Freshers Week, we managed to order 5,000 leaflets asking people to get involved in the Student Association, and then had to sit on the floor of the user office correcting them all by pen so they would be correct. There was a time when I got a standing ovation at the Freshers opening ceremony at Edinburgh for telling me what became the sort of legendary Freshers Week supermarket joke. It doesn't really work so well anymore, but I'll try, because the supermarket doesn't exist, but I'll try it anyway. So the joke is basically that I met a group of freshers and they already seemed to know each other really well. And I said, well, you've only been here a couple of days, how come you know each other really well? I said, did you meet in your halls? And they said, no. I said, oh, did you meet in a society? And they said, no. I said, did you meet through your course? I said, no, it wasn't that. I said, well, how did you meet then? I said, well, and they said, well, we met in a supermarket actually. And I said, well, that's a strange way to meet, isn't it? And they said, no, it's a safe way. And for some reason, I got a standing ovation for maybe more a comment on how charismatic Principal Tim O'Shea is. It was the year when I ran my spoof election campaign, Vote Tim Cobbett, with lots of pictures of Princess Diana under the heading, "It's what you would have wanted." There was a whole page on the campaign website, which I believe you can still access via the internet, if you type in Tim Cobbett Princess Di to Google, where there's a whole page where I outline the process of how I made sure that this is what Princess Diana would have wanted through consulting with a conclave of campaign spiritualists. There was my attempt to get reps involved in academic representation at USER in the first place, because it had a reputation of being something that people thought was maybe a bit boring, and I wanted people to get people interested in it. So in my first speech, when I became a kind of academic convener at USER, I tried to explain the concept to people, and I sort of said to people that some things are not as they sound. And the comparison I made was with the woman who was always hanging outside Edinburgh University settlement promoting homeopathy. And basically homeopathy sounds like it might be something really interesting, but actually it's just a load of made-up non-scientific nonsense. Whereas academic representation sounds like it might be something boring, but it's actually something really exciting. And then I tried to build involvement in course reps through a sort of cult of personality based on myself with a moderate amount of success. Then there's been all the years in which I've been running for SDC, a few different varieties of that. I've never quite managed to pull off the white little glass guy doing gangster rap as Mike Ross does, but I have done a number of poetry recitals. One year I did a kind of version of the Marks and Spencer's being erotic with food ad, which the people who witnessed were still taking counselling for having witnessed it. And then there's been my stories and stand-up, including my favourite, I think it was a couple of years ago, when I started my speech with what remains one of my favourite jokes of recent years, which is that someone rings up the Liberal Democrat headquarters and asks, can we have a copy of your manifesto? And the person says, no, we've sold out. And then you say, well, yes, I know you've sold out, but can I have a copy of your manifesto? A few people I wanted to mention, mainly for my video audience, a few of them are here as well. Peter McCall, who's now the rector of the university, whose unhealthy obsession with the Student Association got me involved in it in the first place, which I have mixed feelings about, but I have got a lot out of it as well as a lot of stress out of it. Ruth, who was the president when I was the vice president of academic affairs, who was a great friend to me during that time. Adam Ramsey, who was one of the people who most stuck up for me when I was trying to do controversial political things at USER, and some people wouldn't get it, and he was the one who always got it. James Alexander, who was the president when I was on the SEC, who sort of started off on opposing sides to me, but we always sort of managed to get on in spite of having different politics, and was a fellow quality geek like me who was happy to have me on all the sort of national quality committees that they had in Scotland, which I really got a lot out of being on. And then a couple of people that were really kind of influential to me in my general time at university. One was a guy called Ross Nielsen, who ran my campaign when I became vice president of academic affairs, and he'd be up at 5 in the morning putting my banners and posters up before I was even up myself, and I was the candidate. And if I hadn't, of course, been elected at USER and then onto the SEC and was steering the SEC, I'd have never actually got to meet all the people that I've got to meet subsequently and had these experiences in these conferences. There's a few people as well that have been involved more recently that you will know that I particularly wanted to, there's one other person on that other list actually, first which is great support to me in my time at the university was the Anglican chaplain at the university at the time, Bob Gould. And sometimes I spent a lot of time in the chaplaincy centre basically when I wanted a bit of space and time out from all the madness of university life, and I wasn't sure what I thought about all the religious issues. He was an Anglican, so he didn't mind my uncertainty anyway. And he was always great to talk to him, to go and have a coffee and get away from it all. And a kind of symbol of the relationship that I had with him was at one point on my birthday he gave me a card which was simply a picture of the Titanic, and on the back it said, "This is a picture of the Titanic on its maiden and ultimately tragic final voyage." And inside he'd written, "I bought this card at a book fair a few years ago, but I've never been able to find an opportunity to actually give it to somebody. But now I've met you." Read into that what you will. Some of the people more recently that have been involved, I think one of the things that really started to change the kind of work that NUS Scotland did was when Graham Kirkpatrick was elected somewhat unexpectedly to the role of, first of all, Deputy President and then became Vice President of Education. I think he was a terrific example of an officer that actually got the balance absolutely right between knowing the detail of the kind of academic policy area and then applying progressive politics to that in a serious way. We're doing both of those things, and Robert's very much carried on that kind of work. All the stuff that's happened in the college sector in the last few years has been amazing as well. I think when I first came to these conferences, you would have maybe 10% of the people would be from the further education sector, and the unions were not very well developed, and although well-meaning, sometimes about half the delegates from FE that were there were sort of conspiracy theorists who wanted to tell you that they're not really sure that they believe that the buildings could have naturally fallen down at 9/11. Whereas now we have college student associations who are actually really well developed and starting to do serious work. And part of the reason for that is that NUS Scotland took on actually making its priority for a couple of years of the whole work it's doing, stuff that related to colleges. So all of a sudden there was a reason for all the college students to actually attend the events, and it was worth their while, and they were engaged in it. And even being from a university background, I would say that was absolutely the right thing for them to do, because it's a bit like right now. I work in a student union where the people are from less traditional educational backgrounds, because it actually makes more of a difference, and it's the same for the college sector. You're actually doing things for people for whom that's going to have a transformative effect, rather than a load of the best will in the world Edinburgh students who don't really need your help anyway. When I was at Edinburgh, in fact, there used to be a light bulb joke for every university in Scotland, and the one for Edinburgh was, how many Edinburgh students does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer was 1. He just stands in the middle of the room and expects the light bulb to revolve around him. And that was true of a lot of the less pleasant people that I had to meet with, had to deal with in USA when I was an officer, some of the less political ones. I think some of the stuff that's happened recently, like at USA, the activism at USA has been really inspiring. All the movement, I think, was really built by McCash and all the people involved in that. And he's for someone that's sort of a political leader, really ideological on one hand, he's also really down-to-earth, nice guy to know as well. And the same applies very much to Gordon as well. Like Gordon is my first conversation with Gordon. I think he introduced himself to me as a Raj communist, and then took part in a kind of routine with me that I've only previously encountered with Jehovah's Witnesses, where he basically tried to kind of evangelically sell the socialist tenets to me. But I think that's really good, because I think one of the things that the left sometimes does is it talks to itself. And the only way you're actually going to ever win the argument is if you move some people from where they are to where you want them to be and actually have that conversation with them. And Gordon does that really well. And Gordon and Robert are actually exactly the kind of people that I'd have wanted to vote for when I was a delegate attending these NUS conferences, and I never had the opportunity to vote for candidates like that. You had like the Labour students and the independents on one side, and then you had a kind of faction on the far left that mainly fought with itself and wasn't really interested in winning or getting anything done. I'm so pleased that now there is a movement that gives people an option to vote for candidates that are left but are serious about winning. There's also a lot of people involved in NUS Scotland that really, I think, have brought a perspective that you just otherwise wouldn't get. So people like a lot of the stuff that Stacey was talking about, and Robert about the issues that the student parents face. And people like Vonnie and James Smith and their background being, growing up in Kerry. It's one of the really powerful things about the student movement. Other than the students I work with in my own student union where I work, and the people I've met in Scotland, no other circumstance in my life would I ever meet people from these diverse range of backgrounds. I'd meet a load of other middle-class Londoners. And there is a danger that if society becomes like that, it just becomes fragmented and we all look out for our own self-interest. And actually, I'm so much more aware of a range of issues I would have no idea about thanks to my interactions with those people. And there's some really great people on the SEC at the moment. And also, as well, like the work that's happened into some of the other work that's happened in terms of with the housing co-op stuff. When I was on the SEC, we proposed a motion to do housing co-ops. I was told by the leadership of the organisation at that time that it was too difficult. In other words, it was too radical. And now there's stuff happening on that. Likewise, some of the work that Aurora has done on the international student fees, actually doing a serious campaign on the international fee cap. But when I was a delegate originally, the international student officer for NUS was running an international students conference in which he invited every vice-chancellor in the United Kingdom, but no international students. And it wasn't always taken as a very serious NUS position. It's becoming more so, and I think having a full-time international officer at the UK level helps, but also the really serious campaign work really helps as well. And then the last people I think I'd like to talk about are the people I work with now, because I think some of the people have asked me why I'm quitting, and in a way that's a great question to be asking, because I wasn't really expecting after 6 years on the SBC for anyone to be asking me why I was stopping. I really expected them to be asking them what sort of sad bastard would still be here after this amount of time. So it's nice they have been asking that. But one of the reasons why I am stopping is because I want to spend, well, as well as spending more time walking my dog and following the mighty AFC Wimbledon on weekends, I want to spend more time actually developing my own student union where I work, because it is under-resourced. They've had a history of being a commercial services and activities union, and I want to make them more serious about representation and campaigning. And there isn't many of us to do it, so it means a lot of work, and I just want to put all my focus into that. I'm not leaving for any bad reason. I haven't stopped really enjoying being on the procedures committee. I just have got to stop sometime. And it's really like this year, the experience of being able to work with the officers, officers who they've just been, the whole thing where they've just been a student, and I've got this feeling that, whereas I feel like I don't know about much, but at least I do have the right expertise for a lot of the situations that they do face and come into because of my experience in the movement. And I feel that I'm able to actually play a useful role in helping them get the most out of the year that they've been elected to run to, so they can actually do the things they said they wanted to do, and that's really rewarding. And also to Joy Elliott Bowman, who used to be involved in, some of you will know, used to be involved up here in post-grad representation, who created a lot of the beginnings of the structure there at Kingston that I'm now working to further develop and help me in the application process for the job I've got now as well. Amazingly, and thanks to those who've done this, the lobbying process has somehow already begun to find an excuse to get me up to a future conference for something like doing the awards or something. So far be it from me to use my leaving speech to lobby for basically more stand-up comedy work, but please do consider it. I am really going to miss you. What I'm going to try and do is, because I've been running around doing the conference, I haven't had a chance to necessarily talk to everyone at length, what I'm going to try and do is maybe when if Stacey's having leaving drinks in the summer, I'm going to try and come up at the same time and invite people to join me so I can talk to them and say goodbye to them properly.
Leaving drinks? One of us three are, it's all a party.
Oh, apparently it's all a party, but I'll be with the former SBC members in the corner looking at some geeky document. But I've worked with a lot of great people on SBC. There's not time to mention them all now, but I will try and invite them to that. But particularly enjoyed working with Sarah Beattie Smith, who's now become a really good friend who was the chair of SBC immediately before me, before the 4 years that I've somehow managed to keep doing it for. It has been mostly enjoyable, occasionally stressful, but mostly enjoyable. Thanks for putting up with my use of the committee, as well as doing the work which I have tried to do to make the conference more accessible and all the rest of it, but also using it to practice my stand-up. Thanks for sometimes laughing at it. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for putting up with me for all these years and still liking me well enough. And thanks for all the exposure I've had to your ideas and to your politics and your campaigns that I otherwise wouldn't have had through serving on this committee. And for the last time, all the best for the future to the organisation of NUS Scotland and to all of you. and thanks very much for having me, and goodbye.